Welcome everyone to this MOOC on moving rivers. The MOOC is part of the Riverhood and River Commons projects. In order to, in this module 1, introduce the topic, we will dive a little bit into the history of river making, the history of policies, politics, and how they have been shaped around Western dominant thinking about nature, about society, and about rivers. In short, it's the battlefield over the materiality of rivers, the territorial ordering of rivers, and what do rivers mean. We are also going to focus on how to support riverine commons, the commoning processes. Next, we are going to have a look at how to support and engage with and live with and interact with translocal riverine defense commons and communities and movements. We all know what's the problem. We know about the damming of rivers, mega hydraulic projects. We know about the depletion of rivers, the pollution of rivers. We know about how communities have been drowned, communities of humans, communities of non-humans, by riverine lakes created by mega hydraulic interventions, for example. What we see here is that it's not just the voice of the rivers, but at the same time also the voice of the riverine communities that are being silenced, all together. In order to go to the roots, we would have to dive into the history of political, philosophical thinking and acting in Europe, in the West, and see, for example, novels like Utopia by Thomas More, 1516. After the book Utopia, hundreds of books, policies, novels, designs have been made with utopian thinking, and they've enormously impacted on how riverine policies have been shaped. Utopia is about ideal societies, about plannable societies, about shaping order, modern order, out of chaos. And therefore it's necessary to radically break with the past, to make a rupture with the core of the old society in order to build a new one. However, what we also see is that utopia always has its counter mirror, its counter side, dystopia. Every utopian society is also a dystopian society. And it depends on how you look at it. If you look at all the beautiful plannable issues, you will quickly see a utopia. But if you see how people are being discriminated, how they are made to behave well, uniform, how they are being visualized, then you will see dystopia, how they cannot express their own ideas that deviate from the normative practices of the dominant groups. The whole discourse in the book, in the novel, is about tolerance, it's about freedom, but there is no freedom in utopia. Everyone has to follow the same rules. There's universal application, universality of how to behave. In utopia, deviant thinking is being punished. It's not possible. Everybody therefore is under full view, is continuously in the light. Michel Foucault would call it subjection by illumination. Or George Orwell, for example, is talking about how people are made to self-discipline themselves, in order to preserve order, in order to shape the dominant reality that the dominant group wants to see. This is also happening in Utopia. It's a book about colonization. King Utopus, for example, he dug a huge canal in order to separate Utopia, the paradise, from the mainland, the barbarian mainland. This was done by his slaves. It's in order to create perfect modern society, far away from history, far away from rootedness, and far away from the barbarian slaves. Also in Utopia itself, all the waters are being domesticated. For example, the river Anhydrus, which is the river of scarcity, the dry river, it's entirely controlled, utterly controlled by humans, in order to shape perfect society. It's therefore that in political ecology we see water governance not so much as the governance of water by humans. No, it's the control, the governance over humans by using the means water. Water is a means to control. This was in Utopia by Thomas More, but we also see it in all the novels, utopian, dystopian novels that have been written after that. Francis Bacon, for example, The New Atlantis, utter control over nature in order to serve the humans. The technification of water, the technification of rivers, the technification of and control over nature to support human welfare. After that, all the many European philosophers like John Locke, like Jeremy Bentham, Herbert Spencer, and later the neoliberals like Friedrich Hayek, Milton Friedman, they all wrote about utopians and utopias in order to conquer society and nature and to make it purposeful for humans. We see how this has also been established and ingrained in all the major philosophies and ideologies of the past decades and the past centuries. In communism, in fascism, we see it in developmentalism, we see it in neoliberalism, but even now, these days, maybe in romanticism, and other isms, all the isms that have come to appear in order to say what people should do, how nature should behave, and always denying profoundly how people do behave, how rivers do behave, how nature does behave, taking away freedom in order to impose uniformity. What follows from this is that we see a huge gap, a huge divide between, at the one hand, what is seen as modern rivers, modern natures, modern societies, made to serve human needs, and especially elite needs, where particular knowledges, particular values, identities are seen as legitimate. And on the other hand, we see what is being conceived of as chaos, as disorder, which is denied existence. The thousands or millions of ways of how people live with rivers, how commons try to defend their rivers. What's therefore very important in this MOOC, through the different modules we are going to organize in this MOOC, is the struggle over what is a river? What does a river mean? How is it known? How is it being ordered? And who is governing the river in what way? This is central to the struggle over society and nature. It's for that rivers are not external to society. Rivers are part of society. Society is part of rivers. People are part of rivers. Rivers are part of people. Humans and non-humans. And in those rivers, we see the same contradictions embodied as we have in societies. Rivers therefore constitute arenas of contestation, battlefields of conflict. What's the conflict about? The conflict is about, obviously, the resources. Who are the haves and who are the have-nots? But it's also about the rules, the rights, the norms, the laws, the principles. And at the third level, we see a battle over who makes those rules, who makes those rights, those principles, those laws. It's the battle over authority, legitimacy. At the fourth level, we therefore also see a conflict over the discourses, over the worldviews, over the cosmologies, over the regimes of truth, how to order and how to govern rivers. In all, this made the Riverhood and River Commons projects think of an objective or a question that is to support river commoning. How do new water justice movements inspire river enlivening strategies, institutions and practices, in order to support new approaches for environmentally just water governance across cultural and scalar boundaries? In all, in the two projects and also in the MOOC, what we see is rivers in a different way. Rivers as fluvial societies, They are both material. They are symbolic. They are social at once. Rivers are also not just bodies of water. They are not ecological flows. Rivers are communities of humans and communities of non-humans that are entwined. They work together. They co-produce each other. Rivers are also hydrosocial territories. Different ideas of territory, of authority, overlap, interact, and correspond with each other. Hydrosocial territories always in plural. Next, in the MOOC we see rivers not as an object, but as a subject. But what does it mean to see river as a subject? As an ecological subject, as a legal subject, as a political subject, and maybe even as a moral subject. Those are issues we're going to study in the MOOC. In order to see rivers anew in a different way, to understand rivers differently, we've opened 4 windows, or 4 ontologies, or 4 dimensions. In order not to stay with the same instruments we've been elaborating in science over the past decades and ages, we've created the windows of river as eco-society. How do human and non-human communities interlace and interact with each other in order to shape riverine systems? We see river as territory. That's another window. Who makes the rules? Who has authority? Where do the norms and the principles come from? Who establishes the laws? We also see river as subject. What does it mean that river is a subject? What does it mean, rights of rivers? And finally, we work on the topic of river as movement. The river moves us, but also social movements try to interconnect different riverine struggles from different places, going beyond just rooted struggles, but also interconnect them through networks to defend the rivers at large. We hope you very much will enjoy the MOOC and its different modules, and wish you a very interesting debate, reflection and learning process. Thank you very much.